Sup step kids. I remember playing Pokemon Y the same way I played every other Pokemon game as a kid. Pick the coolest looking starter, obviously, Greninja, shut my eyes tight, mash A, and hope for the best. Now, while this might have been an incredibly exhilarating experience and a super effective tactic for beating the game, see what I did there? Super effective, more like super. It's not great for knowing what the actual is going on in the story. Before I bought these glasses and became a massive dweeb and Pokemon lore nerd, I did have a vague memory from X and Y of this like massive giant homeless man coming up to me, telling me that he was on the run from the ICC. He was getting sent to The Hague for some war crimes he did for a little personified flower. But then I put the glasses on and dedicated my life to the lore of the funny, fluffy monster game and all of its exciting intricacies. Once I put the glasses on, everything became clear. And with the release of Legend Z to A around the corner, I thought I should use my newly acquired glasses-given nerd skills to look into what the homeless man was trying to tell me. What war crimes? And what war? Who was this little flower guy that he cared so much about? And who was Blood even fighting? Well, let me tell you what I found out would have shaken my 12-year-old bones to their very core. Wait, so you're telling me this whole game and war was about class divide, alien technology, history, disdain for the aristocracy and political revolution? Yes, Jared, I am. Now, for those of you who are Patrick Mega fans, you might know that I already have a video that touches on this topic. But this is a deep dive, okay? This video goes deep. This video goes right to the core. This is a whole different beast. For those of you who aren't Mega Patrick fans, like and subscribe now, or forever hold my peas. Oh, fuck, my peas! How are they gonna subscribe now? Jeez, oh shit, I gotta go teach a class. I gotta go. Whoa, okay, class. Settle down. Welcome to Funny French Region History 201. This will be your favorite class this semester, and I will be your favorite professor. Today's lecture is on the Great Kalosian War. Now, first things first, to truly understand the history of the Great Kalos War, we need to understand some modern day context and some modern day heavy hitters. In Pokemon X and Y, you play as the stock standard Pokemon World child, who is merely a child, but is set out to stop the dastardly plans of a super evil mega corporation. In this case, it's called Team Flare. Team Flare intend to use the legendary Pokemon of the game to use this green pointy flower gun thing to destroy the world. Or at the very least, the Kalos region. Classic Pokemon villain energy. The leader of Team Flare, who is spearheading the use pointy flower gun and legendary Pokemon to destroy the Kalos region mission, is a bloke named Lysandre. Lysandre believes that the world has limited resources and that poor people are stupid and greedy and want too many of the resources, and so half of the population of the world should just be unalived in a video game, removed, you know? Reminds me of this purple guy. Ring any bells, this purple guy? Similar. Lysandre also looks like he would be a particular kind of sexual deviant. During your mission to stop Flamboyant Lion Man and his hot team's dastardly plans, you're repeatedly approached by this 9-foot beanie-adorned, scarf-wearing homeless man who just looked like he crawled out of a New York City sewer system, who starts dropping some heavy facts and knowledge and lore. This big, homeless, giant New York City man is called AZ. During the player's encounters with AZ drops these big cinematic POVs of what happened in the Great Kalos War. Now, normally, you know me, Professor Patrick, I would normally voice act all of these, but this shit is too long, so I'm gonna put it up on the board and just do a recap. Basically, AZ talks about this man who totally isn't him, by the way, and this man loves a specific Pokemon, Floette, a lot. A Floette? Really? Floette? Of all the Pokemon. Couldn't he have loved like a Garchomp or like a Salamence? Something cool? Flower. But then this big old war starts and Pokemon are getting militarily conscripted left and right. Floette is eventually selected to join the military and is sent up to the front lines to die, I guess? Like, what do you expect a flower to do in war? Smell good? That morale boost. We can all smell like, fairies or something. Basically, Floette goes to the war and dies. So the man finds out his Floette eats shit and he freaks the flippity flip-flop flip-flap out. He's freaking out. He's doing the big freak out. And then he suddenly remembers, wait, I'm a genius. I have access to crazy technology. I can just make like a revival machine. I can just bring this guy back to life. So that's what he did. In this process of revival, he gives Floette eternal life, and he gives himself a little bit of that. But it was at the cost of sacrificing the life force of just too many Pokemon to name. Too many. More than John, Michael, Jason, and Pikachu. More than that. Too many to name. Oh, look! It's the green pointy flower gun thing. Weird. I thought that was being used by Lysandre to destroy people. I was that. We'll take questions at the end, please. Thank you. Now, even though this man successfully revived his Floette, bro was still mad. So he was like, why don't I just make my revival machine into just to kill everything machine? Just to destroy, just obliterate everyone. That's what we'll do. Whoa, that makes more sense now, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense now. Who is that? Wait, is that Jared? Security, remove this man. Anyway, the man uses the weapon, wipes out both sides of the war, just ends it. Done. War over. Finito. Finished. Fine. Shark fin soup. After the war is over, Floette finds out that the man sacrificed a bunch of Pokemon lives to revive it. And obviously, it does not vibe with that. It's not down with killing like countless Pokemon to give it eternal life. Understandable. Understandable. So basically, Floette f***s off to smell nice around another man, and big dude, big man who fired the weapon, he's just left to feel guilty and walk around for a long time. And he doesn't even get to spend time with his favorite flower. But who is this man? Now, this might come as a shock to you all. Remember that AZ dude we talked about, the old homeless guy? Yeah, the player does a Pokemon battle with him later in the game at the end of X and Y. And after the player wins, guess who comes down from the sky? That's right, Floette, the flower. The eternal one, the one that lives a long time. And then we got this amazing meme template. It's been 3,000 years. Wait, what? 3,000 years ago? It's been 3,000 years. AZ's the guy from his own story? What? That's crazy. He looks nothing like his pictures. Just like your mum. But yeah, shocker. AZ is the guy that made the green pointy flower thing. The ultimate weapon. AZ's the guy that did that. He's the guy that killed countless thousands of people in Pokemon to revive what is essentially just a talking flower. But everybody knows this stuff. Everybody knows AZ's little story. It's part of X and Y. You have to watch him say all of this. But how did the war start? Why did it happen? And who was AZ even fighting against? Well, this is where Lysandre comes in. Turns out he isn't just a disgruntled rich boy with too much spare time and fursuit aspirations. He's also a rich boy with a rich boy secret library hidden in his rich boy secret lab, hidden in the capital city of Kalos under his rich boy cafe. You know, normal rich people stuff. Turns out that secret library holds the key to understanding what the heck was going on in the Great Kalos War. This library, with all this important to the plot information and wider lore of the Pokemon world, is an optional room, you know? Like, I'm 900% sure that I never went in here as a child. I'd have to do boring shit like walk up to bookcases and read. I didn't have time for that. I didn't have the glasses yet. Reading, back then, not my style. But now, glasses. So, we read. Now, when you walk into the library, there are 3 different colored bookshelves and a desk. Each of these will provide seemingly unrelated blocks of text when you interact with them. But when you put them together, you can create a cohesive narrative and history of what happened. So on the bookshelves, we have Kalos history, and on the desk, we have a cute little diary entry for Lysandre. Unfortunately, it's not about his assumedly thrilling sexual escapades. However, it is a nice little summation of his overall intentions and general philosophy. We're going to start with the notes on the shelves. So if we put all the information together in chronological order, we get this. The mountains will never know one another, but people can encounter other people, and people and Pokemon mix together. Over the ages, people and Pokemon worked alongside one another and created many things. As a result of this, a leader appeared among the humans. That leader sought to produce even more goods. Increased production of goods created a gap between the haves and the have-nots. Whoa, hold up there. You might be thinking, production? Goods? Haves and have-nots? I didn't think this was some sort of poli-sci econ class. I thought this was Pokemon class. Look, we won't go too deep into the weeds here, but Kalos is based on the real-life country of France. And you know, there was this little, non-important, non-historically impactful thing that happened in France that caused a war that was about class divide and distribution of goods. You might have heard of it, the French Revolution. Whoa. Hold up. Don't click off yet. I know not everybody enjoys learning about real life history, especially when they thought they were watching a strictly Pokemon lore video. But this stuff is vitally important for understanding the Great KALOS War and its impacts on X and Y and probably on Legends Z to A. So now, a brief, incredibly reductive summary of the French Revolution. Basically, 18th century France was popping off for the first half of the century. Making bank, making dollars, whatever currency they had at the time, dollars, making dollars. But unfortunately for the majority of the French population, society was set up in a very triangular, pyramid-y, somewhat feudal way. Basically, in France, there were three classes of people, or estates, as they called them back then. There was the first estate, the clergy, the rich, important people. These were a minuscule percentage of French society. Then there was the second estate, the nobles, another group of rich people who again made up a very small, but slightly larger than the first estate proportion of French society. These two estates put together, the first estate and the second estate, they make up about 10% of French society total in the 18th century. And then there was the third estate, literally everyone else, everyone that worked in France, the rest of the population, the other 90% of the people. And guess who was paying most of the taxes? That's right, the workers, the majority of the population, most of the people, yeah, most people. The third estate, you know, the workers, the people adding value to the economy. Classic. Guess who didn't really get a proportional say in real terms how their tax dollars were spent? That's right. Also, the third estate. Funny how that happened. Funny how that happens. So basically, late 1700s, shit hits the fan for France in the wallet department. Louis XVI, the king at the time, is going crazy in the spending department on wars and on the nobles. And then there are also a bunch of other economic factors that are confounding the bad economic situation in France at the time. Meanwhile, the majority of the French population are inheriting these Enlightenment ideas of like democracy and liberty from some of the wars that the French are fighting in. But basically the third estate is eating the brunt of the bad French economic situation, and that they ain't happy with how the ruling class is managing things. So at the next Estates General, which is basically like a big advisory body for the monarchy, where all the different estates got to give a say about what their wants and needs were, at this Estates General, the third estate shows up and they get tricked and lied to. Eventually, after much debacle, the third estate says, we ain't doing this no more. So they make a coalition with some of the other estate members called the National Assembly and start a revolt against the monarchy. So this is an incredibly reduced and heavily narrativized version of the inciting events that caused the French Revolution, but pay close attention to the rest of the notes in Lysandre's library. As we continue to read and analyze them, you might notice a similar set of themes arise. So back to the notes, put them back on the board for you. From what we just read, people in Pokemon were just chilling. They were making stuff. They were hanging out, having a good time. Then basically this guy shows up one day and is like, you know what? We should make more things. We can make more things. We should make more. And so people start making and producing more stuff. Now, this leader may have been a bit of a greedy gobbledygook guts man, because according to these notes, maybe the fruits of the production weren't being fairly distributed across the population. Now, I'm not making a judgment on what is fair, but the notes do say that the gap between people having goods and not having goods was increasing over time as production increased. Classic class division. Sounds a little bit like the pre-revolution feudal structure of French society, does it not? You, out there, student, does it sound like that? Yes, it does. All right, moving on to the next notes. The king's name was AZ, and he was both the beginning and the end. He used technology unlike any seen during that era to unite KALOS for the first time. Okay, so AZ, big bro with the flower, he was the guy, he was him, the production god. Also, just some small confirmation here. We are talking about a place called KALOS in the past. I'm gonna say it's pretty safe to assume it's pretty much the same geographical KALOS we are experiencing in X and Y. Now, this note points out that AZ wasn't necessarily a production god because of his amazing managerial skills, more so that he had cheat codes on. He had crazy technology with him, or knowledge of crazy technology that seems to be time displaced or alien or something. But basically, it's OP. It's way too good at making KALOS good at making stuff. It's way too good at making KALOS make stuff. We also know from AZ's little speech that he gives us in the game that we talked about earlier that AZ made the ultimate weapon. I think it's pretty safe to assume that the ultimate weapon is built from the same technology that AZ used to bring Kalos great economic prosperity. This all leaves a lot of questions about the origins of AZ and his technology, which we are going to touch on today, but I'm going to leave the majority of that for a future lecture in this series. Who is AZ actually? So subscribe with bell on for that one. That one's coming to you. That one's coming to my YouTube channel to you soon, shortly. And if you're lucky, it might already be in the playlist that I've linked below. So basically, AZ was the king of Kalos, and he brought with him crazy technology that united Kalos and spurred on great economic growth. Next note, AZ had a younger brother. It is said that he led a legion of greedy souls who wanted to seize the Kalos region. His dark intention was to make it his own. Okay, so AZ has a brother. Interesting. The note suddenly swaps here from talking about recorded fact to sounding like mythos, legend, and hearsay about what AZ's brother's dark intentions were. It seems like a weird change of tone and voice, going from authoritative historical recounting to weird alleged witness testimony. It really makes you think about who the author of these notes could have been and if they have any motive in characterizing AZ's brother this way. I personally couldn't find anything on this. If you out there have any theories or ideas on who it might be, comment those below. But if we go through the passage we just read in the context of the prior notes, it seems like AZ's brother had identified that gap between the haves and the have-nots and wanted to have what some of the ruling class had. AZ's brother looking like a great military leader, Napoleon, out there leading the revolution against the aristocracy. Still weird the way AZ's brother's intentions were characterized. Not saying that overthrowing an established monarchy is necessarily a good thing, but seeing how history paints the French revolutionaries, you'd think AZ's brother's intentions would be given a fair assessment in these notes. More Robin Hood vibes, you know? Must have been one of AZ's buddies writing him. Masuda gives some context to all of this in an interview he did with Game Informer in 2014 that shows that the war might differ somewhat from the strict framework of the French Revolution. You know, apart from the whole magical creatures fighting a society powered by future technology. Masuda says that the war was a clash between two countries, which obviously delves outside the confines of the French Revolution, but it does leave the door open for more world building. But because of the parallels to the French Revolution so far, my thoughts are that AZ's brother started his revolutionary war from within Kalos. He then took his revolutionary army and staked out his own territory in what was once the south of ancient Kalos. This southern separatist revolutionary region claimed to be their own sovereign state, and that's what eventually goes to war with the original Kalos. This is the other country that Masuda is talking about. But why south of Kalos? Well, if you look at an official map of Kalos, you'll notice it only looks like the top portion of France. That area that would be southern France is all rocky and obscured by clouds. Like I was saying, maybe it was Kalos at one point, but during the build up to the war, this southern region is where AZ's brother and his gang of revolutionaries established their separate country. I don't know if you guys remember the pre-DLC announcement hype period for Scarlet and Violet, but everyone was predicting that that grayed out northeastern section of Paldea was the southern section of the Kalos map, and that we'd be able to explore it in the DLC. But then the DLCs came out, and we weren't able to explore it. We weren't even given a peek. However, the first part of that theory does make sense. Spain, what Paldea is based on, and France do have a border. So if we're assuming that Game Freak is deriving its in-game geography from the real world, it's pretty reasonable to believe that that northeastern grayed out section of Paldea is that southern section of Kalos. Maybe this region south of Kalos, northeast of Paldea, is where the battleground of the Great Kalosian War was. Maybe this is where AZ fired the ultimate weapon. Maybe the reason we can't visit it from Kalos or Paldea is not just because it's rocky and mountainous. Maybe it was absolutely obliterated by the ultimate weapon 3,000 years ago and is uninhabitable. Maybe this southern region holds many of the secrets of Kalos and the wider Pokemon world at large. You know, just something for you guys to chew on. Back to the notes. Full of sorrow, AZ built the ultimate weapon. When he did this, he left the following words. What's wrong with bringing something you love back into the world? Without my beloved Pokemon, no other Pokemon have any meaning. Now, between the section we just read and the last, it's pretty clear that AZ's monologue is supposed to fit in here. This is where the war actually happens. So, filling in the gaps with what we know, AZ must start some official military operation against his brother. The beginning of the war. The war eventually forces AZ's favorite Pokemon, Floette, to join the war effort. After AZ finds out about Floette's death, he's filled with sorrow. He then uses his crazy technology to revive Floette. To revive Floette, AZ has to sacrifice a ton of Pokemon. After reviving Floette, AZ's still mad at the world, so he makes the ultimate weapon into a mass destruction thing and ends the war by destroying both sides. In that same interview from before, Masuda gives more context on the use of the ultimate weapon. AZ used a machine to bring his beloved Pokemon back to life. By doing so, he gave his Pokemon eternal life, and he was also affected by this. Part of that was him turning into a giant and still living even after 3,000 years have passed. However, unlike his Pokemon, he still grew old. Basically, AZ had his life extended from using the ultimate weapon, and Floette was given eternal life. From this, we can extrapolate that the war would have had to have happened within AZ's normal human lifetime because he only got his extended lifespan at the end of the war. AZ would have probably looked physically younger than he does in X and Y when he fired the weapon because, as Masada states, AZ still grows old. And to be fair, he doesn't look that old when we see him in X and Y. Along with this, AZ was probably an adult and the king for quite a while before his brother revolted and the war started. He was able to unite Kalos and make them into a productive powerhouse, which I'm sure wasn't an overnight thing. For the information we do know about the war, we know that many years passed between AZ's Floette being sent to the front lines and AZ discovering its death. So if AZ ain't that old before the war starts and still must be relatively similarly aged when the war finishes, and we know that at the very least many years passed during the war, I think it's safe to say the war lasted between 5 and 10 years. There are a bunch of other implications about the ultimate weapon that come from this Masada quote, but I'm gonna put a little pin in this for now and come back to it later. Let's move on to the next notes for now. AZ, the man who was king, disappeared. When AZ, the man who was king, vanished, he took the key to the ultimate weapon. That is the item required to activate the weapon. But when he saw how Kalos had been ravaged by the war, he took the weapon his brother had created and he buried the weapon deep underground. The king's brother told his progeny the location of the ultimate weapon and died. That is something to be used by sophisticated powers, not by humans. Human beings must create a world where such a weapon is unnecessary. So basically, AZ feels guilty after finding the ultimate weapon and runs off. AZ's brother also survives the war, sees that his brother is a genocidal maniac and tries to cover up his war crimes by burying the ultimate weapon deep underground. He then tells his descendants the location of the ultimate weapon and cocks it. Just before he game ends though, AZ's brother leaves a warning about the ultimate weapon. The use of the ultimate weapon isn't for humans, it's something that sophisticated powers should use. Something interesting to note about the original Japanese and its direct translation is that it says it's something for a god to use and humans shouldn't touch it. I'm gonna reference KISKEYM's analysis here. You know, the term god as it's used here is not referring to the all-powerful god of a monotheist that we often conceptualize in the West, but more so just like a lesser supernatural being who is a little bit stronger than a human. So all that's interesting to note. Another thing that's interesting to note is that AZ runs off with the key, and the key is one of the conditions to activate the ultimate weapon. Okay, that's it for the bookshelves. We have one more key piece of information to analyze, Lysandre's notes on his desk. When I was young, I went on a journey around Kalos with my Pokemon. I reached out to help those suffering because they had nothing. At first, they were grateful, but eventually they began to take my help for granted and demanded more and more. Will fools like these people consume the Kalos region? This world is stable and secure, so the population of people in Pokemon continues to increase unabated. But there's a limit to the amount of money and energy the world is capable of producing. Either everything is lost, or only a handful are saved. This is something best not left to a man. I must use the tool of a higher power. Kind of confuses himself for a god there, no? So Lysandre has some weird, twisted, bastardized version of AZ's brother's desire. He's identified the haves and the have-nots, but he thinks that the have-nots are stupid and greedy and they gotta go, because there's only so much stuff to go around. He's on that Thanos shit. It's also weird that Lysandre uses the term tool of a higher power when he's referring to what we can assume is the ultimate weapon, because you know, when we're in-game at Lysandre Labs just now, that's what he's trying to activate. Also, how does Blood even know where the ultimate weapon is? Didn't AZ's brother only tell his descendants? Oh. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. He just straight up tells us that that's what's up. He is that. He is one of them. That's all the notes in Lysandre's library. But when we put them all together and analyze them, we get a pretty good idea of what happened in the Great Kalos War. There was a political disagreement between two brothers that sparked a war paralleling the real-world events that led up to the French Revolution. AZ's brother goes and makes his own state in what is probably the south of Kalos, and then a war breaks out that lasts for about a decade. And then AZ ends it by using his crazy technology to obliterate that south of Kalos region. AZ's brother buries the ultimate weapon and passes down its location to his lineage, which trickles all the way down to Flamboyant Lion Man. So what implications could all this have on Legend Z-A? Well, I think the most interesting thing that I'd love to see is just any information about that southern Kalos region. It seems like Game Freak's been teasing at it again since Scarlet and Violet. Surely it's time for a reveal sometime soon, and Legend Z-A seems like the perfect time for that to happen. Ungreyify it. Let us explore it. Or at least let us learn some information about it from, like, I don't know, one of AZ's other descendants or something. Because, you know, I'd love to be right about that being where AZ's revolutionaries set up their state. Because I love being right. And because Legends Zeta A is about, well, it would seem it's about Mega Revolution again, hopefully this south of Kalos region can unlock a lot of the mysteries still left by Mega Evolution. Another thing I'd like to see from Legends Zeta A is hopefully some information about the reconstruction of Kalosian society after the war. How did Kalos rebuild itself after AZ fled? Was the monarchy immediately abolished like in the French Revolution? How did Kalos recover and reorganize? I think maybe meeting some new characters, like I said before, other descendants of AZ's brother who could shed some light on this would be crazy cool. Some more lore dumps. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about the Kalos War. It seems a little incomplete though, right? Like there are a billion questions about AZ's origin, AZ's technology. How does the ultimate weapon work? How does infinity energy work? What do the legendary Pokemon have to do with this? What are the sophisticated powers that are being talked about? But unfortunately, clock's ticking and class is over. I gotta go home and clean up all of those P's that they're just everywhere. They're just everywhere. Luckily for you though, this is just one lecture and video in a long series about Kalos and all of its mysteries that I'm doing in the lead up to Legends Zeta A. So if you're watching this closer to or after the release of Legends Zeta A, go to the playlist in the description and you can see a ton of other videos on everything Kalos. But if there are no other videos in the playlist, you better like and subscribe because they're coming and you need to have that notification bell turned on so you know when they come out. Yeah, you better do it right now or I get first dibs on your mum for the rest of the night, all right? But yeah, sorry to blue ball you guys right now. The entirety of Kalos is too much to dive into for one video. So subscribe for more. Remember to follow my Twitter at PatrickYourMum for little sneak peeks and insights into my videos, theories, and other hot, and I do hot things. And I'll see you at the gates.